while that car didn't drive great, it didn't look great, it actually didn't race bad. And yet we were very critical of that car. Now we've got a car that looks great, drives good, and we've done 2 races, so I think it's a little early to be really gauging where we're at from how it races. So I think that we have to understand that we all play a role in growing the sport, and when we say and do things that negatively could affect the sport, while sometimes it doesn't need to be said, because other people are paying attention to what's happening and making their own opinions, you don't need to say that. And I think that it was obviously pretty evident to me that NASCAR decided that that was taking it too far.
Let's go to who had the next question? I think Jeff Gluck did, and we'll go to Shannon and then to David. Go ahead, Jeff.
Jeff Gluck from USA Today. Along the same lines, Denny in general, it seems like he's going to challenge NASCAR's authority, kind of, and he's not backing down. He said he's not going to pay the fine, and seems like he's going to appeal it all the way. From what you know of Denny, I know you know him a little bit. Are you surprised that he's choosing to stand his ground at all? And what do you think his chances of success are going head-to-head with NASCAR?
I mean, do you want me to try? I mean, we are in Vegas, so we can try to count the odds of when the apology is going to be coming, and when the we're all in this together to grow this sport tweet, is going to be coming. But your guess is as good as mine. I mean, you don't listen. I think it's been an interesting story for somebody to challenge that authority, and that's fine. But we at the end of the day, I know whose sandbox I'm playing in, and I like the sandbox, and I like to play in it, and I want to have the best opportunity, have the most fun in that sandbox. And so sometimes while you don't always like it, you got to bite your tongue and just go out there and race. And listen, I've been there before where I've wanted to challenge that and say those things, and if he chooses to do that, that's his prerogative. I think in his mind, he's just being honest with himself, and didn't see anything wrong with it. But again, look bigger picture. That's the way I look at it, and so there's times when I feel like, hey, this is my place to speak my mind and say what's there. But as Claire said, sometimes I just choose to do it a little bit less harsh.
Shannon, and then we'll go to this gentleman here.
Shannon Spake, ESPN. When you do choose to speak your mind, do you think that maybe you will think about the way that you're going to speak your mind and the comments that you're going to make based on this most recent penalty and the way that Hamlin approached it?
No, I'm going to go about it the same way that I always do. I mean, I feel like, I try to think before I say anything, and I try to think if this is going to be something that is going to negatively affect the sport, negatively affect my sponsors or myself, my team, and is it worth it? That's, I try to do that when I'm doing interviews and when I'm talking about things that are going on. Hard to kind of do that in the heat of the moment over the radio, during a race. But when I get out of the car, I'm usually pretty good at being able to do that and think about that. And so I won't be doing anything any different than I ever have before.
Let's get this gentleman right here, and then we'll go to Lewis and then Alan. Go ahead, sir.
Harry Ransom, World of Racing. Professional drivers, of course, have to handle different conditions at different tracks, but as an outsider looking in, excuse me, how do drivers prepare differently if you have curved pit roads versus straight ones? I would think I'd rather go to a track with a straight one. Comments on that?
Yeah, the thought process is usually more, as you talk to your crew chief, depending on where you qualify, there are certain I think of Richmond as one that has a pretty good curve to it. And like Phoenix last week, there's down in 1 and 2, and so you make those decisions based on where you qualify and where you'd like to pit and the advantages and disadvantages of those types of pit roads. But the curves are usually less of a concern as the grip level of a pit road or an opening on pit road. Usually you're trying to qualify better to get either that number 1 stall, so you just have to roll across the line to beat other cars out under caution, or you're looking for an opening to where it's just clean in, clean out. But this particular pit road has the concrete pads that we see a lot, but they're all different textures in how they finish them, and this one's extremely slick, and so you have to be very, very careful coming in. You don't get much grip leaving as well, so you spin the tires a lot, so you're trying to minimize that, but you really can overshoot this pit road, the pit boxes very, very easily. Now the transition from this track from the track onto pit road is extremely, extreme, I guess is the only way I can say. The transition is a significant one, and so you have to definitely manage that risk versus reward entering the pit road as well. Pepsi in my pit box, but yes. Yeah, anything. I mean, that's what we do. Whatever NASCAR will allow us to do, and because of like I mentioned, this slippery, and that stuff really doesn't help me until I lay rubber down on it and slide the tires across it. Then when that rubber gets laid into that syrup or whatever it is that they're putting on there, then it gives me more grip. But for them, it's instantly more grip. Yeah, it's more for them. And you don't want those guys slipping and sliding around, especially the ones carrying tires in a jack, and then there's some safety issues as well, but most of the time we do it for speed.
Take 3 more questions. David, Lewis, and end with Mark.
David Caravella, NASCAR.com. Jeff, is a guy who spent all of last season battling back from a poor start. What does that take out of a team? Did you feel like you guys were maybe spent by the time you finished that climb and maybe got into the chase?
We were. I mean, it definitely, it can either tear you completely apart or make you stronger, and I think in our case it made us stronger, and I think that's just a sign of how strong-knit of a team that we are, how we communicate, because we were challenged every weekend with good race cars and bad results, and we just kept fighting through it, but in this sport, in this day and age, it's so competitive, so far back, that it's hard to find your way out of that type of a hole. If you get into one early in the season, you've got to perform extremely well and really go on a streak in order to get out of it. And so I think that it's the best thing really that happened to us. Even though I don't like the way we ended up this season, I think that coming into this season and the way we ended the final race of last year, going through all those tougher times, certainly made my communication and relationship with Alan Gustafson and our engineers much, much stronger. Like even just yesterday, we struggled. We weren't very good during the test, and yet at the end of the day, we weren't pointing fingers at one another. We're just working to get through it and to make sure that today, we made improvements, or at least by Sunday.
Go Lewis and end with Mark. Go ahead.
So, Lewis Frank of Auto Week. We're talking a lot about transparency today, and let me put it in context for you. When you were coming up in the days of Dale Earnhardt Sr., sometimes there'd be a dispute in the garage and the sanctioning body, and they'd have a conversation in the hauler, and then it was resolved, and life went on. And I was wondering, is there too much transparency today?
Well, and I think, that's some of NASCAR's response to this, is that, they like to be given the opportunity, to discuss it and work on it, more privately. And I think that, and I've mentioned this many times in here, the schedule, the competitiveness, now all these debriefs that we do with our teams, how we don't practice after the nationwide race like we used to. There's just, we find ourselves doing more for sponsors as well, and there's just not that opportunity that there used to be to see 3, 4, 5, 6 guys up in the NASCAR hauler discussing the sport and discussing the rules and discussing, you know, the racing and you know, whether or not that. And I've always told, you know, NASCAR that wasn't because we thought we were actually being heard or we actually thought we were making a difference. It's just we felt like we're getting it off our chest and that you might be listening. And I think that, you know, we lose some of that now. And, you know, I'm a big fan of true drivers' meetings. I'm not talking about on Sunday morning. I'm talking about get the group of drivers together, you know, with NASCAR and just have some open discussions, you know, about what's happening. You know, I mean, we go to a test to develop this car, and we're working on developing the car and what's happening with the car. We're not really openly discussing things as much as I think we'd all like to. And so, you know, you go down certain paths based on what you see on the track and a little bit of conversation. So, you know, I think that sometimes we, you know, it'd be good to get back to some of that and see a little bit more of that, but it's going to have to be scheduled. It's not something that's just going to happen the way it used to happen. And to elaborate on that, I know for me when I came in, like Ray Evernham he'd say, I just saw Dale Sr. going to the NASCAR hauler. You better go over there and see what's going on. You know, and it was one of those things where you knew that Dale had their ear. And so if you weren't up there giving your side of it, there could be a result that come out of it that might, you know, affect you. And so, you know, half the reason I was even up there was just to see what was going on, to make sure I could give my 10 cents. And there's usually others that followed as well, because everybody kind of saw when Dale moved in there.
Final question, Mark, go ahead.
Mark Darrow, PRN, down the middle here. Jeff, going back to your initial comment about Denny Hamlin's situation here this weekend, the general consensus about the Gen 6 car with the teams and the fans has been very positive to start the year. And do you think this should have been handled internally so as not to really, you know, spotlight, you know, any disagreement with the car?
Well, I'm not saying how it should have been handled. I'm just saying that I didn't even know about his comments until yesterday. So, I mean, I don't know how much it was written about. Maybe it was just because I was completely out of touch. I was out in the sand dunes Monday and Tuesday just having a blast, so I didn't know what any media was going on. So maybe, you know, maybe it's just me, but certainly this thing has blown up after yesterday and has drawn a lot more attention to it than I think had there not been a fine. And I don't know if that really justified a fine, in my opinion. I don't think it was right, the things that Denny said and how he went about it, and it probably needed to be handled in some way. But, you know, I just feel like I wouldn't be getting asked these questions had they went and just talked to him about it.
Jeff, thanks for coming in. Thanks for the initiative you're involved with, and good luck this weekend.